We are on
Demai,
Gimel,
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 Gimel.
Gimel, Gimel. If one finds fruit on the road and takes it in order to eat it, and then decides to put it away, he may not put it away before tithing. But if he took it originally to prevent its getting lost, he's exempt. Whatever one may not sell in the state of Demai, one may not send to a friend to one's friend in the state of Demai. Rabbi Yossi allows when it is certain that, but he must inform him. If one takes wheat to a Kuthian miller or to a miller who is an Amaret, his condition is presumed unchanged in regards to Maisvus and Shvius. To a non-Jewish miller, it is Demai. If one deposits his fruit with a Kuthian or an Amaret, the condition is presumed unchanged in regard to Tait and Shvius with a non-Jew as his fruit. Reb Shimon says Demai. Reb Shimon says Demai. If one gives to a hostess, he tithes what he gives her and what he receives from her, because she is suspected of exchanging it. Rabbi Yossi says we are not responsible for deceivers. He tithes only what he receives from her. Okay.
Okay. All right. So now a similar case now in Mishnah Vav. Hanosin Chamosa. He comes to his parents-in-law's house, and his parents-in-law are Amaretz. Okay, so now he's brought some food, so that he want, because he keeps the kosher. He's the chaver, and normally you're not allowed to eat by a chaver is not allowed to eat by an amaret, so he has to give her his produce uh, to prepare for them. So he's brought a sack of wheat, which he knows for sure is is usar, tahor, all those good things.
Mm.
And now has to make sure that it's mastered before he gives it to her. Aser es shehu nosein lach, ve'es shehu no tell mimena. And he
Mm.
has to master it again after she gives it back to him. Why? Mipnei shehi chashuda lechala efes hamiskalkel. Because she's suspected of swapping something that she burned. Maybe she messed it up. And now Amar Rabbi Yehuda. Rabbi Yehuda says, "Rotzahi b'takanas bita ubosha nechasana." She is she this Rabbi Yehuda here is explaining the Reisha. In fact, the Reisha says the commentary is actually Rabbi Yehuda. So he's saying what's the reason for this is because she's embarrassed. She wants her daughter to eat good food, and she's embarrassed to say to her son-in-law, I'm sorry, I burned the food that you gave me. So if that happened, then she wouldn't. Then she would swap with some of her own stuff, which of course is going to be demai. Which is why, of course, he has to separate from it. He has to take take master from what he gets back. Mode Rabbi Yehuda benose nechamos shvius. However, Rabbi Yehuda concedes that if he gives shvius to his mother-in-law, she'ena chashuda lachlif, that she's not going to swap. The ha'achilas bita shvius to give her. In other words, he's got shvius produce that he legitimately acquired in the field because it was hefka, and he told her that this is legitimate shvius stuff, and she's not going to swap it with stuff that was illegitimately acquired during shvius. Let's say things that were shamor or that were traded with or whatever. So there she's not suspected ad kedei kach, because even the Amei Haaretz are more careful with shvius. Why? Yeah, yeah, because the Amei Haaretz regard shvius a lot more stringently than they do tevel. That's the general rule. So therefore, Rabbi Yehuda agrees. Now, hang on, who is he agreeing to? This was all him in the whole Mishnah. So who's
Right.
he agreeing to? He's agreeing to Rabbi Yossi in the previous Mishnah. Remember in the previous
Right.
Mishnah,
Right.
Rabbi
Right.
Yossi Rabbi Yossi said you don't have to master it on the way back, on the way in, because it's if the innkeeper is going to swap your produce with hers, then it's her problem. If you've given her tevel and she doesn't master it, it's not yours. Um, but Rabbi Yehuda clearly disagrees with him that no, as soon as it leaves your hands, it has to be mastered. Um, so what's Rabbi Yehuda conceding over here is the fact that in this particular case with the shvius, yeah, I agree with you. You only have to master it in one direction. But notice you have to master it in the right. You only even in fact, Shvius doesn't even have to be mastered, but you don't have to suspect that there's anything wrong with it. That you don't suspect them of swapping when it comes to Shvius. So and Rabbi Yossi says as far in the previous case where you've handed over Tevel, you only have to, you can hand over Tevel and just master it on the way back. And make and pretend as if nothing happened.
Shvius is not I just got the word. You just said it, and I forgot it. Shvius is not. We don't have to worry about Shvius because it's not being harvested or anything. Is that what we're
So
saying?
the Shvius. So again, we do have to worry about Shvius. We got to make sure that Shvius, as we know, is from experience is difficult
Right.
because you can't trade in the fruits and you can't and also the vegetables. Any sfichim that grow
Right.
that grow after Rosh Hashanah become aster completely. So it becomes complicated. So anyway, but at any rate, we say that the halacha follows Rabbi Yehuda that you don't have to suspect the Ami Aretz on Shvius.
Okay. It would be better if there was a halakha that said you couldn't eat by your mother-in-law. I don't know.
That you couldn't eat what?
By your mother-in-law. Yeah.
Okay, well, hold on. We're getting there.
I know.
Okay, Perek Dalet. Halokech peiros mimisha eno ne'eman ala masros. So he purchases peiros from somebody who is not ne'eman. Okay. B'shachach la'asran. And now comes to Shabbos. He looks at this produce and says, "Oh, my gewalt! I bought this Demai, and now it's and now I've already cooked up my supper for Shabbos. It's too late. It's already Shabbos now, and if I don't eat this, I don't have anything to eat on Shabbos." Mm-hmm. Okay, so he has an eitzah. The Chachamim baked in a heter into Demai, right? V'shachach l'asran. Okay, v'shoalo b'Shabbos. He can go back to the merchant. He can find the merchant on Shabbos and say, "Listen, tell me, the vegetables that I bought from you on Wednesday or yesterday, whatever it was, had you mastered them?" And the guy says, "Yes, I had mastered them." Yochal al piv. You can trust him. Just for Shabbos, you can trust him. Okay. Why can you trust him? A couple of reasons given in the Perishim. One is that the Amaret he's afraid to be over Avera and to particularly on Shabbos to tell a lie on Shabbos is more chamor in his eyes than not taking Maaseh. So like, well, somebody's coming to me on Shabbos. How could I tell a lie on Shabbos? Okay, that's one possibility put forward by Rambam and Bartanura. And another one is that Eimas Shabbos alama aretz inyan Maaseh. And that's again it's to do with the ema of Shabbos that he's got a yira now because it's Shabbos. So because Shabbos is kover lemaser, right? We learn this in Masechus Masros about even though you can eat casually in the field, as soon as Shabbos comes in, that Shabbos itself is kover lemasros. So you can't eat things on Shabbos without taking maser from them. Even if you're out in the field. Okay, since he sees that on weekdays you can eat casually without taking maser, but you can't on Shabbos. So therefore he's got much more of a year of Shabbos as far as maser is concerned, and therefore even though he's more a heter for himself to eat food without maser during the week, on Shabbos he would never do such a thing. Okay, so this is the explanation of Maharsha or Maharshal and Maharshal. Okay, nonetheless, the point, the bottom line is that if the Amma Aretz tells you on Shabbos, "No, I mastered this," you can rely on him. Right. Clearly, you should have mastered it before Shabbos, but now that it's Shabbos, you can't master it anymore. Okay, so you're allowed to eat, taking his word for it. Chashcha Motzei Shabbos. Now you've got leftovers on Motzei Shabbos. Whatever your leftovers are, now you got to take Maaser again. Okay. Why do you have to take Maaser again? You were eating this the whole Shabbos, and now you've got to take Maaser.
Because we said we trusted him. They took it
We trusted him on Shabbos, so why can't we trust him on Motzei Shabbos?
because we
So
said before that they didn't. We can't. We just can't trust him. We don't know what he's done. Yeah, Shabbos.
okay, well,
Shabbos.
but according to both explanations, we trust the Amaretz because Shabbos puts a certain euro into him.
Right.
So we say he was telling the truth on Shabbos. So why is it suddenly no longer telling the truth? Now, do we no longer trust what he said now that it's Motzei Shabbos? But we do. The fact is that we actually do. We still do trust him, but since there's another reason why we don't want people to carry through onto Motzei Shabbos, because the Chachamim only allowed you to rely on his word on Shabbos, because on Shabbos you couldn't make a tzaka, you couldn't do anything else about it. You had no alternative. Here you've got an alternative. You don't need to rely on him. Just take Maaser,
Right.
and now it's sorted. Okay. And even according to those who say, okay, we believe him on Shabbos because he's got this yira, nonetheless, we only rely on this for the needs of Shabbos. But once it's already Motzei Shabbos, it's a gezerah, according to Tosfos Yom Tov. It's a gezerah that if you start relying on the word of the Amaretz for call, even though you relied on him because there was Shabbos intervening, you're going to come to start relying on him even when it's just regular call and no Shabbos involved, which we don't want.
It seems like there's
So
a double. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
So we want it to be 100% clear that the only reason why you could rely on the word of the Amaretz was because it was Shabbos. Now that it's Motzei Shabbos again, you've got the alternative. Take Maaser, sort yourself out, and don't get used to relying on the word of an Amaretz.
It seems like it's almost a double avera, because if he didn't take, he's afraid to say that he didn't take Meiser on Shabbos, but also if he didn't really take Meiser on Shabbos, he's also putting a stumbling block in front of the
well, that's the thing, is that you're giving him a michshol that he's now going to be putting a michshol in front of you. Right. Yeah. But that's the shikul over here, is that they estimate that the Amaretz would rather be honest, even though it's embarrassing to him, because he's got this era of Shabbos and Masras, and he doesn't want somebody else to be nichshal because of him. See, the Amaretz are from, they're Shomer Shabbos, they do all the right things, except that they're a little bit careless in certain aspects. They're not people who willfully mislead you. We're not talking about tzedukim or kusim or anything like that. Okay. Lo Metzao. Now rewind back into Shabbos. He goes running around, can't find the Amaretz himself. Amar lo echad she'eno ne'eman ala masras. But one of his friends sees it. You're looking for Joe, the vegetable dealer. He went away for Shabbos. Can I help you with anything? He said, well, do you know Joe takes maaser from his vegetables? And he says, absolutely, Joe always takes maaser from his produce. For sure, it's he took maaser. So the guy himself is not a chaver. He's also an amaretz. He's not trusted in maasras. But nonetheless, he said this. He says, "Musar in hand, ochel al pif." You can still trust him, even though it's a second-hand testimony. So you can go back home and enjoy your vegetables. Okay. Chashcha Motzei Shabbos. Once again, Motzei Shabbos lo yochal ad sheyaser. He still has to take maasros after Shabbos for the same reason as before. Trumas maaser shel demai shechazul imkoma. Okay. Now, Trumas maaser is that's the truma portion of the maaser. So remember, you take 1/10 to be maaser rishon, and 1/10 of the 10th is Trumas maaser, which needs to go to a kohen, which has the din of truma. And a non-kohen is not allowed to eat it. Now that portion over there is 1/100th of the original. In other words, it's 1 against 99.
Right. Okay.
Which is just too little to be mevatel. So if he took the Trumas Maaser out and it fell back into the pile, there's just too little in that pile to be mevatel it. Okay, now that's if you have vadai. So if you have vadai, you've got a problem. But if this itself started out as demai, look at what the Mishna says. Trumas Maaser shel demai shechazul imkoma. it fell back into its place. Rabbi Shimon Shazuri Omer, Af b'chol sho'alo v'ochel al piv. He says, if such a thing happens, and you can go back to the Am Haaretz that you bought it from, ask him, did you take maaser from it? And if he says yes, you say, no, this is okay, right? And probably the reason why we're makil in this particular case is because actually minat Torah truma is batal barov. You only need a majority against the truma according to the Torah. So if it was a gezerah derabanan that we made, you need 100 against the truma. So therefore, they say, okay, since Demai itself is a gezerah, we're not going to be gozer and gezerah el gezerah, and therefore you're allowed to, if the Am Haaretz tells you now that he mastered it before he gave it to you, even during the week, you trust him on this, and you don't have to lose this whole pile of kolin.
When we're talking about the first Shabbos, is that the Shabbos of Sheva Brachos? The Shabbos after, is that what they mean?
Where are we talking about the Chashka Motzei Shabbos? You're talking about the first Mishnah Aleph. We're talking, yeah.
In Beit.
Well, we haven't started base yet.
I know, but I was just wondering. I was just asking about that. So
yeah, that's right. So exactly. So we're talking about that's you've got notes written in there that we're talking about Sheva Brachos week. Yeah, that's the Yerushalmi's explanation of the coming Mishnah. That's a spoiler. Okay. So let's go into Mishnah base. Hamadir is chaver sheyochal etzlo. Where somebody where Reuven says to Shimon, come eat by me. If you don't eat by me, I swear and neder that you'll never have any hana from me. Okay, and who eno ma'aminu ala masters. Now Shimon is a chaver and Reuven is an Am Haaretz, and so Shimon's a little reluctant to come and eat by him. Ochel imo b'Shabbos rishona. He can say one Shabbos he can eat by him, and afal pi she'enu ma'aminu ala masters, even though he doesn't trust him. Ubivad sheyomar lo me'usar inhen. As long as Reuven says to him, no, all of this produce is me'usar, it's fine.
Mm-hmm.
And that's permitted only in the first week. With Shabbos Shnia, but the second week, afal pi she'nada mimenu hanaya, even though Reuven repeats his neder and says, if you don't eat by me, I'm going to make a neder against you. Lo yochal ad sheyaser. He's not allowed to eat there unless he personally goes in to take the maastros.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, because now after another week he's had an opportunity to go and check that he's taking the maastros, or the Am Haaretz is doing the separation of Chumas and maastros in front of him. And the Yerushalmi explains that this whole case is talking about a Sheva Brachos week of a chassan where Shimon has married Reuven's daughter, and Reuven insists that the Sheva Brachos must be at his house, and Shimon's reluctant. Shimon's reluctant because he knows that Reuven is not necessarily. He knows that Reuven is an Am Haaretz, and he's not sure that Reuven takes the Chumas and Masters properly. Okay. Your camera's gone off, by the way.
My camera's off. You're right.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Sorry.
No problem. Okay, so we go back to Paya then. Zion first.
Zion. If a person consecrates his vineyard before the olet were recognizable, the olet did not belong to the poor. If the olet in it were recognizable, the olet belongs to the poor. Rabbi Yossi says they give the profit of growth to the temple treasury, which is shecha in the aris, whatever he cannot reach when exceeding his hand, and in the regolot after he passed it.
So the difference between the aris is what's on the trellis, and that's so then it goes by what his hand can reach. But when it's on the floor, the roglios are the grapes that are just growing on the floor. That goes by where his feet are. Once he's past them, that's too bad.
Too bad. I can't go back. From when is everyone permitted to take leket? After the namashot have gone. In the case of Perid and Oliot, after the poor have gone in a vineyard and have come. In the case of
olives, so the namashos were the slow-moving old people.
Old people, right? So that. And in the case of olives, after the second rain has fallen. Rabbi Yehuda said, but they are not some who harvest their olives only after the second rain has fallen. What rather after the poor man goes out and he does not bring back 4 issues worth. They are trusted concerning leket, shecha, and peh in the season, and concerning Maisa Oni during its year. entire year. And the son of a Levite is always trusted. And they are trusted only concerning things that people are accustomed to give them. Okay. All right.
Right. Okay. Brachas. Hey Aleph.
One should only stand up to recite the tefillah in a reverent mood. The pious men of earlier times would first wait an hour and then recite the tefillah so as to direct their minds to the all present. Even if a king were to greet them, he may not return the greeting. Even if a snake were to be curled at his heel, he may not break off. Now we had this other Mishnah where it said that if a king came and if it was a Gentile king or
Yes.
then you could
Right.
greet.
So they're right. If it's because the Gentile king is an Indian of Pikuach Nefesh.
Right, right. And even if the snake was at the heel, I think we said we could
Yeah. So if it's a poisonous snake, that's also an Indian of Pikuach Nefesh.
any snake to me is poisonous. They mentioned the power of the rains in Who Revives the Dead, and asked for the rains and the blessings of the season. And in the Havdalah, you favor man with knowledge. Rabbi Kiva says one recites it as an independent blessing. Rabbi Eliezer says in the thanksgiving. If one says your mercy extends even to bird's nest, and for the good which you do to us shall your name be remembered, we give thanks. We give thanks. He is silenced. If he went before the ark and erred, another shall take his place. He may not decline at such a time. From where does he begin? From the beginning of Baracha, where he fell into error.
Okay. Mikvas Yud Vav.
I can't help but think that today is Thursday.
Well, it does begin with a T and end with DAY.
I know. All right, Vav. Beis Shammai says we may not immerse hot water in cold water, or cold water in hot water, or clean water in foul water, or foul water in clean water. Beis Himmel says we may so immerse them. If one immerse a vessel that is filled with liquid, it is as though it was not immersed. But if he filled it with urine, he is regarded as water. If he filled with purification water, it is not cleaned unless the water of the mikveh is more than the purification water. Rabbi Yossi says, even if a vessel with the capacity of a corpse contains only one revius of these liquids, it is as though it was not immersed. All foods can combine to make up the amount of half a pras that disqualifies a person, and all liquids can combine to make up the amount of a revius that disqualifies a person. This is the stringency in the case of drinking tamei liquids over the case of a mikvah. They made other liquids the same as water. If one ate tamei foods or drank tamei liquids and then immersed himself and then vomited them up, they remain tamei because they do not become purified in the body. But if he drank tamei water and then immersed himself and then vomited up, it is tahara because it can become purified in the body.
Because water becomes tahor inside a mikveh, which other things don't. Yeah.
If one followed a ring that is tahor, and he entered a tent containing a corpse, and then he had himself sprinkled upon, and the sprinkling repeated, and he immersed himself, and then he vomited it up, it was as if it was before.
His body insulated the ring against the oil. So even carry on.
If one swallowed a ring that is tamei, he can immerse himself and eat truma. If he vomits it up, he is still tamei and it renders him tamei. If an arrow is stuck into a person, when it is visible, it intervenes. If it is not visible, he may immerse himself and eat truma.
Hadran alach maseches mikvos.
Okay.
Okay. Kalim Zayin Hay.
I don't have the wrong place. Here, if one of the feet were removed, the remaining feet contract tuma via contact, but do not contract tuma via airspace. These are the words of Rev Meir. Rev Shimon rules them tahor. If he made 2 feet, one opposite the other, they contract tuma via contact and via airspace. These are the words of Rev Meir. Rev Shimon rules them tahor. If they were higher than 3 finger breadths, from 3 finger breadths and downward, they contract tuma via contact and via an air space. And from 3 finger breadths and upward, they contract tuma via contact, but do not contract tuma via airspace. These are the words of Rav Meir. Rav Shimon refused them tahor. If the feet extended beyond the edge, then everything within 3 finger breadths can contract tuma via contact and via airspace, while everything outside of 3 finger breadths contracts tuma via contact and does not contract tuma via airspace. These are the words of Rav Meir and Rav Shimon and Ruz Tahor.
Right. I think we had a as far as I recall, we said that there was a like that should be a flashing light to us when a kli cheres contracts tuma only by touching and not by airspace. That means it's the tuma durabanan. As far as I recall, that was it. It was something to make you aware of the fact that this is only a tuma durabanan when it's only by touch, because normally a kli cheres that's tamei d'oraisa is only by airspace. Because in order to touch it, you have to go through the airspace. So if the airspace is not tamei, but now you can become tamei from touch, that's like alert. This is durabanan.
In other words, Rav Meir, Rav Shimon, Ruz Tahor. How are these 3 finger breadths measured? Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says the rule is placed between the feet. The ruler is placed between the feet. Everything from the ruler and outward is tahor, while everything from the ruler and inward, including the place of the ruler, is tamei. Okay. There's one more. I left it in my thing.
Are you on to a new volume?
Yeah. That one partition with boards or with curtains. If the sheretz is found in one compartment, everything is tamei. Regarding a damaged basket plugged with straw and hanging into the airspace of the oven, the sheretz in the basket the oven is tamei. If the sheretz is in the oven, any food added inside the basket is tamei, but Rav Eliezer Ruz Tahor. Rav Eliezer says that the container affords protection in the more severe case of a corpse. Should it not afford protection in the more lenient case of an earthenware vessel? They said to him, it affords protection in the more severe case of a corpse. That is because we can divide tents. Should it then afford protection in the more lenient case of an earthenware utensil, given that we cannot divide an earthenware utensil?
Right. Okay, this may be urgent. I've just got 2 calls in a row, so hold on a second, please. Carry on with Baba Basra.
If one sells produce to another and it did not grow, even if these were seeds of flax, he is not liable. Rav Shimon ben Gamliel says, in the case of garden seeds which are not eaten, he is liable.
Right, because he could say, look, I gave you the seeds for eating. I thought, I didn't realize you wanted for seed, for seed corn or for whatever. But if it's for garden flowers, then obviously he's not going to eat them. So if they fail to sprout, then he can claim back a warranty.
If one sells produce to another, he accepts upon himself a quarter cup of refuge per seah. With figs, he accepts upon himself 10 worthy worms per 100. With a seller of wine, he accepts upon himself 10 souring grapes per 100. With jars in Sharon, he accepts upon himself 10 inferior ones per 100. If one sells wine to another,
the bar was a lot lower in those days, huh?
Yeah.
If nowadays you buy things and you find one little wormy thing, you take it straight back to the buyer, to the seller, and say, how could you sell me something that's got worms in it?
Just the thought of the pigs with the worms.
Mm-hmm.
If one sells wine to another and it sours, he is not liable. If it is known that his wine sours, it is an erroneous purchase. If he said to him, I am selling you spiced wine, he is responsible for its preservation until Shavuos. Old wine, it must be from the previous year, and very old wine from 3 years previous. Okay.
All right.
And Yom
Gimel Beis.
Why was this necessary? Because one time the moon's light rose and they thought that the east had lit up. So they slaughtered the daily sacrifice and then had to take it out to the place of burning. They took the Kohen Gadol down to the mikvah, and this was the rule in the temple. Whoever moved his bowels needed immersion. and whoever urinated needed to wash his hands and his feet. No person may enter the temple courtyard for service, even if he is tahor, until he immerses himself in a mikvah. On this day, the Kohen Gadol immerses himself 5 times and washes his hands and feet 10 times, all of them in the holy atop the private chamber, except for this one only. They spread linen sheet between him and the people. He undressed, descended, immersed himself, ascended, and dried himself. They brought him 10 golden vessels, and he donned them, and then he washed his hands and feet. They brought him the daily offering. He made the incision and completed the slaughter for him. He received the blood in a vessel through it. He entered the temple to burn the morning incense, and he prepared the lamps of the menorah. He offered the head and the limbs, the chavitin meal and offering and wine.
Okay.
That's it.
That's us.
Okay. I have
Okay.
a quick computer question for you. In your